Now let's understand about saving function. Saving function. In simple words, saving refers to that part of income which is not spent or rather not consumed by the consumer. Saving function is regarded as counterpart of consumption function. Counterpart means similar to. So saving function is similar to consumption function. As we know, income is consumption plus saving. So if we rewrite this equation and if we want to know then what is saving, so saving is income minus consumption. Saving function refers to functional relationship. That is, it depends on two variables. First variable is total saving and second is total income. So thus we have the equation saving is a function of income. So here saving is dependent variable and income, that is Y, is independent variable. Why? Because saving depends on income. So thus saving function shows that when income increases, saving also increases. So there is a positive relationship. Properties of saving function. Students, as you already know, we have also done properties of consumption function, that is APC and MPC. So if you have understood the properties of consumption function, you will also be able to understand properties of saving function. So because they both are counterparts of each other. As I said, saving function is a counterpart of consumption function. So same goes to its properties. So let's understand the very first one, APS. APS stands for average propensity to save. It is regarded as the counterpart of APC. That is, APS is similar to APC. Apart from this, what is APS? APS is the ratio of total saving to total income. Therefore, APS is equal to S divided by Y. Apart from this, APS, now both the ratios, always understand students that both the ratios must compulsorily add up to 1. Okay, so they together, that is APS and APC together constitute total income. That is why both have to add up to 1. So this here we can write it as APC plus APS is equal to 1, or you can also rewrite this as APS is equal to 1 minus APC. So whichever you feel is comfortable to you, you can mention this in your properties of APS. Second property of saving function is MPS, that is marginal propensity to save. MPS is counterpart of MPC. That is, MPS is very much similar to MPC that we've already done while doing properties of consumption function. So what is MPS? MPS is the ratio of change in total saving. Can you see in the formula, change is denoted by delta, right? That symbol is, the triangle symbol is of delta. So MPS is the ratio of change in the total saving to change in the total income. Apart from this, further, now since again the two ratios of MPC and MPS must necessarily add up to 1, so that is why we can write this as MPC plus MPS is equal to 1, or you can rewrite this as MPS is equal to 1 minus MPC. Further students, if MPC falls, that is if consumption falls as income rises, then MPS, that is saving, will necessarily increase as income rises. Correct? If, in simple words students, if the consumption is falling because the income is rising, this means what? Saving is increasing, right? So MPS will increase as income increases, and only then the two ratios will add up to 1, because we want that both the values should together be 1. This is the diagram of saving function. Let's understand this diagram in detail. Now let's understand the diagram of saving function. As you can see in the diagram, the x-axis represents income while the y-axis represents consumption and savings. CC curve is the consumption curve. The consumption curve shows the level of consumption at different levels of income. Apart from this, there is also SS curve. SS curve represents saving curve. CC curve, if you observe students, CC curve touches the y-axis at point C and not at the point of origin. The reason is that even if the income is 0, our consumption can never be 0. So that is the reason it touches, CC curve touches y-axis at point C and not at point of origin. So in technical words, at point C, there is minimum subsistence level of consumption when the level of income is 0. Further, the CC curve moves upwards to the right, thus indicating that as the level of income increases, the level of consumption also increases. But the increase in this consumption is lesser than the increase in income. This means that the CC curve increases, but it is less steep than the 45-degree line. If you observe, the 45-degree line is very steep. The shape of the 45-degree line is very steep. So as compared to that, the shape of CC curve is less steep. So this shows what? That even though the level of income is increasing, consumption is also increasing, but in a lesser amount. Further, this CC curve intersects the 45-degree line at point A, and at this point income and consumption both are equal. Therefore, there is no saving. That is, we call it as what? Zero saving point. I repeat once again, the CC curve intersects the 45-degree line at point A. At this point, consumption and income both are equal, and therefore there is zero saving or no saving. Further, to the left of A, okay, so further at the points left of A, if you carefully observe, you will understand that this consumption curve is lying above the income line, correct? So this indicates what? That consumption is more than income. And when the consumption is more than income, there is dis-saving, also called as negative saving. I have also mentioned here dis-saving, this part. Okay, so this is met through borrowings. Further, for all the points to the right of A, we just now did to the left of A, now to the points to the right of A, if you observe, here consumption curve, CC curve, is lying below the income curve. Can you see? CC curve is lying below the income curve, and therefore consumption is less than the income, and that is the reason there is positive savings, which I have mentioned in both the parts. In this slide, you will observe that as the level of income increases, the gap between consumption and income also widens. Can you see in the diagram? The gap here is very small, but the gap here is widened. It is broad. So this shows what? As the level of income increases, both the gap is also increasing. Between consumption and income, this gap is also increasing. Further, we already know that income is nothing but consumption plus saving. So the consumption function not only measures the level of consumption, but also the level of saving. Right? We have understood both level of consumption as well as level of saving. That is the reason we say that saving function is counterpart of consumption function. That means it is similar to consumption function. Factors affecting the consumption function. According to Keynes, there are two types of factors that affect the consumption function. That is subjective factors and objective factors. Let's understand each of these factors in detail. As you can observe in the slide, factors that affect the consumption function are of two types, subjective factors and objective factors. Let's start first with the subjective factors. The subjective factors are those factors that relate to psychological characteristics of human beings, that is the human nature, the social institutions, the different types of social practices. These are likely to remain more or less stable during the short period. But these factors also determine the form of consumption function. That is will be the slope or the position of consumption function. That is the shape of the curve. Human behavior regarding consumption and savings out of increased income depends on psychological motives. So Keynes has put forward 8 such motives. Let us understand those. The very first one is the motive of precaution. The motive of precaution means everyone's desire, that is willingness to build up a reserve against unforeseen contingencies. This means what? People are always risk averse. That means what? They always like to keep some money in case of emergencies. So what kind of emergencies? Emergencies like accidents, sickness, and many other reasons. So this they can store, that is the money they can store, which reduces their current consumption needs and it increases their savings. Second is the motive of foresight. This means what? It means the desire, that is willingness of people to provide for anticipated future needs. That is, for example, old age, family education, child's marriage, or child's further studies. So what will people do? People will save little bit of their money or from their income for their future. Next, third motive is the motive of calculation. This means what? This means the desire to enjoy a larger consumption but at a future date. This means what? That in future they want to enjoy more, they want to spend more, but in future. So today only they will start saving. This takes place through the way of interest and appreciation of amount. So people prefer smaller immediate consumption at present so that they can enjoy their future. So they will lessen their consumption today so that they can enjoy their future later on. Next, fourth point is the motive of improvement. This means the desire of people to enjoy a gradually increasing expenditure in order to improve their standard of living. This means what? That slowly, little by little, they want to have a good lifestyle. They do not want to live hand to mouth, but they want to enjoy their life. So they cannot just one day, think that, okay, let's start buying cars, or, let's start living a high class lifestyle. That cannot happen in one day. So in order to have this kind of fulfill this kind of dream of theirs, what will they do? They will slowly, gradually, day by day, try to achieve this dream. So this means motive of improvement. Next, fifth point is the motive of independence. It is the desire to enjoy a sense of independence and the power to do things. People spend less. This means that, for example, suppose if I don't like to spend more, if I like to live a simple life, so it is my decision, right? I am independently responsible for decision. So that kind of independence I must have so as to decide whether I want to live a simple life and therefore save more, or just want to spend more and live a lavish lifestyle. So this is motive of independence. Next, sixth point is the motive of enterprise. This means the desire to secure sufficient wealth, that is to have sufficient money so as to carry on any business projects. So if I want to start my own business, I will plan accordingly for future so that I can invest and start my new business. This is motive of enterprise. Next, seventh is the motive of pride. This means what? The motive of pride means the desire to bequeath a fortune. This means what? That suppose if I am having a property, but it is my will, okay, to give my property to someone else. So that is entirely my own decision. This means motive of pride. That is the desire to bequeath a fortune. That means I will take my decision because I own my property. So I will take my decision whether I want to pass it on to someone else or to my own children or whatever. And the last motive is the motive of avarice. The motive of avarice means people's desire to satisfy their miserliness. This means what? This means that there are many people in our society who always like to have more and more income, but they do not want to consume that income. They only want to save more and more. So they want to spend less and save more. So these people are called as miser people, right? So that is the motive of avarice. Further, Keynes has listed some additional subjective factors. Now these additional subjective factors are mostly only for the businessmen. So let's understand these additional subjective factors. The very first one is the motive of enterprise. This means what? This means the desire to do things so as to expand. So this you have to think from the point of view of businessmen. So their desire is to expand and to carry out further capital investment. Second is the motive of liquidity. This means the desire of businessmen to face emergencies and also to face the difficult times successfully. As we know, when you are into business, there will be a time of difficulty, there will be high as well as low times. So during those low times, the businessman must have enough capacity to successfully deal with this. And this can only take place if he has enough liquidity, that is enough money in his hands. The third is the motive of improvement. This is the desire to secure a rising income to become successful management. So this means it is always better from the point of view of businessmen to gradually increase his income, that is little by little, slowly increase in his income so that he can protect the management at any point of time. And last is the motive of financial prudence. The motive of financial prudence. Prudence means cautiousness, that is to take care, to safeguard oneself. So it is the desire of businessmen to always have adequate, that is enough finance with them so as to secure himself from depreciation. Right? As we know, after few years the capital machinery starts depreciating. So he can safeguard himself and the institute. This next is objective factors. Objective factors also cause a shift in consumption function. Let's see which are those objective factors. The very first one is unexpected gains or losses. That is, when there is unexpected gains or losses takes place to the people's consumption level change suddenly. Second is fiscal policy. People's propensity to consume, that is their desire to consume, also is affected because of the changes in the fiscal policy, that is taxation policy that the government adopts. For example, if the government imposes heavy taxes, obviously this will reduce the disposable income of the people, that is the income which is for spending. Similarly, on the other hand, if the tax rates are lowered, then the people's consumption will increase. Next, third objective factor is change in expectations. Next is changes in expectation. This means the people's propensity to consume, that is their desire to consume, is also affected by the changes in people's expectations about future events. For example, changes in income, changes in prices, changes in the availability of goods. So all this affects and it changes people's consumption level. For example, if there is an expected war in the country, or I can give you a best example in the current situation of COVID. Because of this COVID situation, what we people are doing, we have started hoarding goods, especially all the commodities of daily consumption. We have started hoarding goods, anticipating, that is expecting that we might not get in future because of the situation of lockdown, right? So this is changes in expectation point. Next is changes in the rate of interest. Changes in the rate of interest will also affect people's consumption level. If the rate of interest rises, people may consume less and save more. On the other hand, a fall in the rate of interest will promote people to consume more and save less. Keynes later on thought that the mentioned objective factors are inadequate and therefore added two more objective factors, that is the distribution of income and holding of saving liquid assets. So the distribution of income, that is depending upon the country's level of income, that is if the country is providing equal distribution of income, then people's consumption level will increase. If there is unequal distribution of income, the people's consumption level will fall. Second, and the last one, is the holding of saving liquid assets. So if people have large amount of savings, so their consumption level will increase and vice versa. Implications of Keynes' consumption function. Now let's understand the implication of Keynes' consumption function. Implications means what conclusions we can draw after understanding Keynes' consumption function. The very first implication is importance of investment. Consumption function tells us a very important fact that all of our income is not spent on consumption. So there is a tendency among people to not spend their entire income on consumption as their income increases. So there is a gap between total income and total consumption. Therefore, according to Keynes, investment should be increased so as to fill this gap between consumption and income. Hence, Keynes gives lot of importance that investment plays a very important role. Second implication is invalidates Say's law. Invalidates means disapproves. So who disapproves? Keynes. Keynes disapproves Say's law. So Keynes disapproves Say's law of market. Further, as we have already studied, Say's law states that supply creates its own demand. But Keynes refuses Say's law. This is because, according to Keynes, when income increases, consumption also increases. But increase in consumption is less than the increase in income. This leads to the problem of demand deficiency. Demand deficiency means less demand. So this leads to problem of less demand. That is, all that is supplied is not automatically demanded. Thus, supply fails to create its own demand, leading to problem of overproduction and unemployment. So this is the reason Keynes invalidates or disapproves Say's law. The next implication is decline in MEC, that is marginal efficiency of capital. As we already know, MEC is also called as expected rate of profit, that is expected rate of profitability. So MEC may decline when consumption does not increase in the same proportion of increase in income. As a result of this, there is fall in demand, and because of fall in demand, there is further decline in the demand for capital, thus leading to a decline in MEC, that is expected rate of profit. The next implication is turning points of the business cycle. Keynes' consumption function also tells us and explains us the various turning points of the business cycle. As we know, the upper turning point of the business cycle, that is from boom to depression, it takes place because of failure of people, that is inability of people to spend their entire increase in income on consumption. On the other hand, the lower turning point of the business cycle, that is from depression to recovery, this takes place as a result of failure of people or inability of people to reduce their consumption to the full extent of the fall in income. This means inability of the people to reduce their consumption to the same extent or in the same proportion as the income reduces. The next implication in Keynes' consumption function is need for state intervention, that is requirement of government to intervene in the smooth functioning of the economy. So as we have already studied, students, classical economists always said that there is no need for the government to intervene in the functioning of the economy. But it is the key has emphasized or rather given importance for the government to intervene. This is because, according to Keynes, government must encourage consumption so that the problem of overproduction and unemployment can be avoided. The next implication of Keynes consumption function is over-saving gap. According to Keynes, when income increases, consumption also increases. But consumption increases less than the increase in income. Therefore, the part of income which is not consumed is saved. As this gap between income and consumption increases or widens, this results in the danger of over-saving. The last implication is income generation. According to Keynes' law of consumption, there is a slow nature of income generation. This means that the increase in income or the growth of income takes time. If income increases, it will increase consumption, but to a lesser proportion than increase in income. This means that the entire income is not spent on consumption, thus showing the slow nature of income generation growth.